right, cool. Yeah. So let me ask you this: when was the first time you actually, or did you start? So you started with phone books before cards,
Around the same time I was doing, I started with both of them.
doing
Yeah.
them both. Okay, okay. So what got you into being a strongman?
The long version of the story starts when I was a kid.
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah, I was overweight, had a horrible, horrible stutter, and I would get called on by the teachers, and I would start stuttering, and it was just
Yeah.
this really bad experience. And then the other kids, of course, would make fun of me and laugh at me and pick on me and all that kind of
Kids
stuff.
are assholes, dude.
Totally. And it was even worse then because we're talking in the the late 70s.
Yeah, it wasn't the PC area.
Yeah. And so
Era, rather.
yeah, so but I'm also extroverted.
Okay.
So I took it upon myself to start controlling the negative attention that I was getting by being disruptive and stuff. So I was nothing really terrible, but just generally being a little disruptive.
In class.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because if I'm going to be in a fight, I'm going to hit first, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Was my mentality at the time, and because of all that, I didn't have a whole lot of close friends or anything, but I got fascinated with the world of fantasy and science fiction and comic books and that kind of stuff. Then I saw there were all the cartoons and stuff, and I really identified with the Hulk.
The Hulk?
Because he was huge, he was invincible, he was super strong, and he was fueled by that rage, right?
Yeah.
And so my comic book life, I really identified with him. And then the first switch that flipped for me was seeing Lou Ferrigno on TV.
Yeah.
Playing the Hulk.
Playing the Hulk, yeah.
Because before that, it was just like this imaginary make-believe thing. But then seeing him on TV, I knew that wasn't a costume and it wasn't a special effect. It was a guy in makeup. Now,
right.
Obviously, he had on prosthetic forehead and wig and all that, but he was painted green, and that was really him.
That was his body.
That was his body.
100%. That was very different for the time.
Yeah. And it's not, obviously it wasn't like it is now where strength sports and bodybuilding and that kind of stuff are just so mainstream now. There's this thing on the History Channel now that all these strongman competitors are doing the strongest men in history.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because the other day I saw a clip from an episode where they were trying to rip a deck of cards, and it was laughable at how poorly they did.
Really?
Yeah. One guy, Brian Shaw, stopped because it was hurting his hand. He was afraid he's going to cut himself. And then the other three, I think the fastest time that anybody did it was in like a minute, 15 minute and a half.
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm looking at them while they're doing it, and the cards that they're using, I'm like, I can rip those same cards, not just in half, but into quarters or eighths in less than a minute. So am I stronger than these guys? Well, at that particular feat, yeah. At the other stuff, no. But it's all a matter of them knowing what they're doing. So anyway.
There's a lot of technique there.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah, anyway. So I saw Ferrigno on television, and my habit back then was we would get these Sunday papers, which at the time seemed like huge, right? I mean, I know now they're probably like this because I was a kid. But I would take the comics out and spread them out on the table and go through and read the comics. Well, after seeing Ferrigno on television, Sunday paper came, and I spread the stuff out on the table, and my mom came in, and I had the classifieds spread out. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking for gamma radiation." Because at like 8 years old, I didn't know what else to do.
You don't know the
But there's a
difference.
guy on TV, and he's the Hulk, so,
I'm going to do what he did.
Yeah, I'm going to do what he did.
100%.
And in a pre-Google world, it was hard to find gamma radiation, And, like I couldn't even find so much as a radioactive spider, nothing like that.
It's tough times, dude.
Yeah, so I kind of let it go. These kids today, they just don't know. So I kind of let the idea go, and then not too long after that, I can't really say how long it was because, it's childhood and memories are strange. I saw Ferrigno on television again in Pump and Iron.
Okay.
And so you had Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu and all of those guys from that era.
That's a great documentary.
It really is. And so there were the training sequences, and I'm just enthralled by it. These huge guys, and they're lifting these massive weights. And so then there was another switch. Okay, the way to be able to pick up heavy stuff is by picking up heavy stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I got a set of weights for the Christmas that year, and that started me doing strength.
How old were you at that time?
9 or 10, somewhere around in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I...
so you've been doing this for 40 plus years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so... I was off and on through high school, played football, and everything was kind of bodybuilding methodology because that was the only thing that I could really find in magazines and books and all
Yeah,
that
that's
kind of
all
stuff.
that was out at that time.
In the early 80s, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in my 20s, I became a professional musician and kind of let all that lifestyle stuff.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What would you play? What'd you
I
play?
played guitar.
Okay.
Yeah.
So were you like in a band, or were you just like a one-man show?
I was in several bands. I was in the favorite thing I ever did was a rock band that I played with in college, and we would play in little bars about the size of this room, you know.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is, the guys that I played with them, we all are still in touch, and usually about once a year we'll get together and play this old dive bar in our old college town.
Oh, nice.
Which is fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
To still be doing it 30 years later.
I mean, how many people have friends for that long? Like, you hope to have friends for that
Sure.
long. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Even if it's just like one time, you know, you guys
Yeah.
get together and just kind of relive the.
Yeah, when we get together and start
band
playing,
years.
it's magical. It's fun, you know.
Yeah.
And now there's no pressure because we're not trying to make
Trying
a
to
living
make it.
doing it. Yeah, we're
Right.
just getting together and having fun. But then in my early 30s, I got back into lifting again. Late 20s, early 30s, somewhere around in there. And I was still kind of doing the same sort of stuff. And then I got turned on to the kettlebell world.
Okay.
The RKC stuff.
Yeah,
and-
very early days.
Yeah, very early days. I was at the either third or fourth RKC certification
Okay.
ever.
And for the listeners, will you tell them what RKC means?
Sure, RKC was the branding that came after Pavel Tsatsouline wrote a book called The Russian Kettlebell Challenge, which is RKC. And RKC certification was Russian Kettlebell Certified, and it
Right.
was under the umbrella of a parent company called Dragon Door, which published all the books at the time.
Okay. And was that Pavel and somebody else who put that together?
John Duquesne.
John
John
Duquesne?
Duquesne was the publisher of Dragon Door. He's the
Okay.
Dragon Door is his company. And so the two of those guys got together and essentially created a movement. The kettlebells are pretty mainstream now, you know,
Because of
16,
them.
17 years, almost 20 years later. Yeah, because of the work that they did then. And, you know, because back when I was first getting into it, I went on Yahoo and searched kettlebells. You know, because that's back before Google was happening.
Yeah.
It's back before there was a YouTube, and there was maybe a dozen different results that would pop up, and it all led back to Dragon Door.
Okay.
And I actually had a friend who knew that I lifted, and he had bought a 16-kilo kettlebell and a VHS instructional tape that of the original RKC material, and he loaned it to me, and I went out and played around with it a little bit, and it was a red pill, blue pill moment for me. I'm like, I can
Really?
either ignore this and pretend it didn't happen, or once I catch my breath, I can pursue it.
Yeah.
And I decided to pursue it, went to certification, and started doing that as my job, as my way of earning a living, was teaching other people. So through that, I met a few other people. Bud Jeffries, who was instrumental in it, because he turned me on to feats of strength from a guy named Dennis Rogers.
Okay.
Dennis has been on Oprah, Jimmy Kimmel, David Letterman, like all these shows years ago.
everywhere.
He's been seen by more people as a strongman than anybody else in history, I would imagine. What with all the media coverage that he's got. And Bud, who's an ox of a human being anyway, I interviewed him for my website. And this is before podcasts. So what I was doing with the website is I would do the interview, I would edit it down, I would burn it onto an audio CD and mail it out to my list, right?
Oh.
And so I would always ask guests that I was interviewing if they knew other people that would be good guests, you know, to kind of keep the momentum going. And Bud recommended I get in touch with Dennis, which I did. And Dennis sent me a box full of DVDs of him doing various feats of strength, some of which were shows, some of which were instructional things. And the first thing that I really remember seeing Dennis do was this clip. It was him and his brother were in his brother's car, and they were driving. It was like an old hot rod. And they stopped for some reason, and his brother, who's a car guy, gets out and gets under the hood, and he's messing around. He's like, "Hey, Dennis, go hand me that adjustable wrench from the trunk." And Dennis goes around to the trunk, opens it up, and takes the wrench out, looks kind of mischievously, and wraps it up. And bends the wrench and takes it and gives it to his brother. And I'm like, wait, what did I just see? You know, because Dennis is 5'8", 160 pounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I've never seen him before,
Yeah,
so he's not like a massively big guy.
No.
Very unassumingly
yeah,
strong.
Like if you saw him walk in the room, you would never think he was the strongest guy in the room, but he is.
Oh, wow.
For what he does, anyway. And so I saw that, and I'm like, what the hell am I looking at here?
Yeah.
This guy bent a wrench.
It would have blew my mind in that instant.
Yeah, and so I had set up the interview, and Dennis had sent me this stuff to see what he was about, and he said, if you ever want to learn how to do any of this stuff, just let me know. And I took him up on it, and that was in probably 2007, 2008, something like that.
Okay.
And yeah, probably 2007, and here we are in 2019, and Dennis started doing workshops under the branding of Old Time Strongman University, and I started helping him out with that stuff, and now he's president, I'm vice president, and we're looking at various different ways to reach more people rather than just having 15 or 20 people in a workshop.
Yeah.
How can we get this stuff into the hands and minds of more people? Because the really interesting thing about it, sure, feats of strength are fantastic for just getting stronger.
Yeah.
Or if you want to learn how to, say, rip a deck of cards so that you can, go to a party and be like, hey, everybody, check out what I can do.
Yeah.
That's awesome. But if you dig a little bit deeper, and this is the path that I went on that wound up with the book Superhuman You and with the subject of what I talk about when I do corporate or college or school shows. The Mighty Atom, I can talk for days about, was a vaudeville era strongman who died in the 1970s. Did phenomenal feats of strength, biting nails and chains in half, pulling things with his hair.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just amazing stuff.
Where's he from?
He was born in Poland.
Okay.
And he immigrated to the States in the early 1900s. He died in 1977 at the age of 83.
Okay.
Fascinating guy. There's a book, it's out of print now, but there's a book called The Spiritual Journey of Joseph Greenstein, The Mighty Atom. If you can find that for less than $100, snatch it up.
Oh, that's a steal then,
It's
huh?
an amazing book. So he had a protege called Slim the Hammerman, a guy named Lawrence Farm. His station name was Slim the Hammerman. He's in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. Just turned 85 this year.
Okay.
Still an incredibly strong guy. He's like 6'5" and 200 pounds. Big, massive guy. And you shake his hand, it's like putting your hand in a vice. It smiles back at you. And he was, back in the 50s and 60s, he was a tough guy, too. He would just as soon punch you in the face as talk to you, just depending on how you interacted with him. He's mellowed out some since he's gotten older. Anyway, he was Dennis's primary mentor in putting together shows and feats of strength and developing that creativity and all that. So all three of those guys, I talk about this when I do shows. The Mighty Atom, there's a quote from his book that says, "Never inhibit yourself by the seemingly impossible. If you think that you're strong, then you are."
Okay. I read that on your website.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. That is so powerful.
And then the quote from Slim that supports that is, "You already have the power inside you. You can't access it because of the fear. How are you going to get to it?"
Yeah.
That's
true.
all you have to do is figure out how to get past the fear to access the power. And then when I very first started training with Dennis, he says, you must remove all doubt and limitation from your mind because your mind controls your body.
Yeah, 100%.
So all of that got me thinking about if I want to be superhuman, and I did, what did I need to do to think like a superhuman? And so I started studying how the mind works from a very practical, hands-on, day-to-day, not like a psychology degree, which is fine. I didn't want to be a therapist. I wanted to be superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And so that took me down the path of guys like Napoleon Hill with the quote of whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. Bob Proctor, my friend, Joe Vitale. I don't know if you know Dr. Joe Vitale.
Joe Vitale. That name sounds...
He was in the movie The Secret.
Okay.
And he's written probably 80-something books.
Yeah, I'm sure I've listened to him on... Has he done like Tim Ferriss's podcast?
I don't know if he's done Tim Ferriss's podcast. He was on...
I feel like I've listened to him on somebody's podcast.
Probably.
Though.
He was on London Real not too long ago.
Okay. But so is it his message essentially like the power of the mind and the law of attraction, though?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. He's Well, he was in The Secret, which was all about the law of
Right, and
attraction.
I did watch that.
Yeah, and he's also one of the guys who is very forthcoming and upfront, saying, "Hey, if you watch The Secret and you think that the stuff isn't working, it's not that it doesn't work; it's that you're leaving the action part out of attraction."
Oh, action is so many people would just want to sit back and think about things and not put in the work. But like the work will reveal more opportunity, and it seems like magic, but it's the things that you did prior.
Sure, sure. And sitting around thinking about it will set you up to take whatever action you need to take.
100%.
And when that inspired action hits you, when that idea hits you, that is maybe not even obviously something that's going to get you there, but it sounds like something crazy. Acting on that is accepting whatever you've tried to attract into your life in the first place. Because if you reject that, then you're sending out the message of, hey, I really, really want to attract this thing. I can imagine myself being and doing the stuff that would be associated with that. Oh, here's this opportunity. Oh, no, that can't really be it. I'm just going to sit over here and think about it. Well, then I didn't get the thing that I wanted, so it doesn't work. When actually it's like if you're like really hungry and I bring you a plate with a bunch of food on it, you're like, no, I'm just gonna like imagine my way through this.
Right.
Here's your food, dude.
Right.
You know?
Take it, eat it.
Or even a better way of thinking about that would be like, hey, I'm really hungry. I can just imagine eating cheeseburgers. And I come in and say, hey, you want to go grab a burger with me? No, I'm going to wait for my burger to show up here.
Right.
When the inspired action would be, get in my car and let's go and I'm going to show you a great burger.
Right.
You know? So it's just a matter of being able to recognize that. So that was the big thing for me, was making the connection between the guys who I was studying their mental approach. And there's tons more. It's Wallace Wattles. My current favorite is a guy named Neville Goddard, which if people don't know who Neville is.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Tell me about him.
There's no video footage of him in existence that I've been able to find yet. But he wrote like 10 or 11 books. And there's literally hundreds of recorded lectures where it sounds like someone just set up a cassette recorder in a room with him.
And just told him to go.
And he was just speaking to a crowd, and they just happened to record that. And he died in 71 or 72. So he's been gone a while. And so you imagine the technology that existed in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
And prior to that, to be able to capture what he was saying.
Yeah.
And that's the quality of the recordings that you get. But the message is gold.
So what's he speaking about in particular? So the mind, or like what's his primary
If you
message?
summed up Neville in one phrase, it would be imagination creates reality.
Okay. Yeah.
And the idea being that, like, if we look around this area that we're sitting in right now, nothing that we can look at, the cameras, the table, the coffee cups, our headsets, we all had to be pictured in someone's imagination first.
Yeah.
Before we could be made into a physical reality.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, if you can imagine something, if you can think of it, if you can conceive it, it may not be easy, and it may take a lot of work, and it might not happen today, but it can come to like reality. It really can.
Or it might be easy, and it might just show up. You know,
That's true
it
too.
just kind of depends on what the thing is and how you're tuned into it. And I talk about this in the book Superhuman You. One of the things that really locked it into place, the mind approach that I was studying with those guys, and the physical approach that I was pursuing with feats of strength, was we hear a lot about how athletes, high-level athletes, will visualize themselves doing whatever their event is. And there's been studies, I can't quote the studies where they came from, but there's been studies where they hook the brains up to measure brain waves and had them imagining, and the muscles as well, had them imagine their event, and the brain is firing the message to the muscles to do whatever the event is as if they were doing the actual event.
Oh, yeah.
So the subconscious mind doesn't make a distinction between something that is vividly imagined and something that's happening in 3D reality. So I took that to heart. And I was working at the time on a particular piece of steel that I wanted to bend. The details aren't really that relevant right now for this conversation, but it's a company called Iron Mind, makes a thing, a lot of products for grip training and bending and that sort of stuff, and they have something called a red nail. It's actually just a steel bar that's 7 inches long and 5/16 inch in diameter.
Okay.
And if you can bend that under these certain conditions that they've laid forth, you get your name put on this list of certified red nail benders. I decided I wanted to do that. And so I was training intelligently, progressively, physically doing the things that I needed to do, but I was also vividly imagining the moment of certification. And I had a group of people, but I didn't know who they were. They were just like shapes. And they were all kind of sitting in a semicircle around me. And I did the bend, and I got it done in less than 30 seconds in my imagination. So I was just rehearsing this, and I would fall asleep in this. And there was actually a couple of times, this is when I knew that there was genuine validity to my experience. There was twice that I was just relaxing and kind of in a meditative state and just going through that scene over and over. And I snapped myself out of the meditative state because I started sneezing from the imaginary chalk that I was using.
Oh, wow.
So like I would chalk up my hands and clap them, and it would make a cloud of dust.
Yeah.
And twice, that chalk made me sneeze.
You reacted.
I'm like,
wow.
So that's how deep into that imaginal act I was going. Then when the time finally came, it actually happened almost exactly the way I laid it out. We were doing an old-time strongman university at a gym that I used to own. And so we had all of the attendees were sitting there, and we decided that part of it was the scheduling. I had to have a referee come in and officiate everything. We decided that the very first thing we were going to do was my red nail certification and get that done. And it was kind of set the tone of success for everyone for the workshop 100%. And all that. And so the video is on YouTube now. You can see I'm set up. I do the bend. There's 15 or 20 people sitting in chairs in the same orientation. One of those people was my mentor, Dennis Rogers. And really the only thing that was different from the video and the actual physical experience of it from my imagination when I was practicing it was it took me 17 seconds instead of less than 30.
Okay. Yeah, man, so, that's powerful.
Yeah, so that convinced me that pretty much anything that I want to accomplish starts in the imagination. And actually I found Neville after that.
Oh.
And so it's like I was ready to...
Like you already knew it, but now like the information is kind of validating it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's like I knew it was a thing, but it was kind of scattered all over the place. And then I found Neville, and it was like, well, it's this and this and this and this. And these are the principles that guide this. And I'm like, oh, this guy's already summarized everything.
Yeah.
So it shortened that learning curve and made it something that is very repeatable now. Because I feel like I kind of accidentally stumbled across it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll just go imagine myself doing it, you know.
Yeah, well, you found a process that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the process, and that's the beauty about getting better with anything is like there's a process there. And I'm so fascinated with the mind. I found that like your mind is both like your biggest strength, but also like your biggest inhibitor if you let it be. You know what I mean? Because you have that little voice, like it'll tell you to quit. It'll tell you to be like all this negativity. It's impossible. Why are you doing this? Like or especially I'm sure. In your training, you're pushing yourself, and like you have this voice in your mind that's saying like, "Why are you doing this? You're about to die. You need to stop." But it's a lie. Like it's not true. And then once you break past that barrier, then you really understand like what your true like possible like capabilities are, like what's really possible. And then the sky's the limit. My
approach on training I used to be very much like that about how hard can I push it and how far can I take this one thing. But my approach on training has changed a lot in the past few years, primarily because of a good friend of mine named Adam Glass, who's one of the strongest people in history. He's an amazing guy. But he was talking to me about a training approach rather than seeking a limit and finding it and breaking yourself. Because if you truly hit the limit, if you truly go past your limit, then something broke. It has to, by definition.
Yeah.
If you think you hit a limit and nothing broke, then it was a perceived limit, not an actual limit.
Right.
It's a very important distinction there. And so he explained to me a process that he uses, which involves asking the body questions in a particular way and how the body responds, a biofeedback approach, which is really fascinating, but it would take a long time to explain it. But the main idea being, what if instead of making everything as hard as it can be and then breaking yourself, and then even something that was easy is now difficult? Like we're just sitting here in chairs right now and it's comfortable.
Right.
But if, say, we went and squatted or deadlifted and went past our actual physical limit and blew out a disc, sitting in a chair the way we are right now would be a painful experience.
Absolutely.
So there's this circle of comfort zone around us that if we actually hit the limit is going to contract until even things that were very easy become difficult.
Right.
Because you're chasing that difficulty. What if instead of chasing that difficulty, we just make everything as easy as we can? Meaning, what's the minimum effective dose of whatever physical thing that I'm going to do that will be a step in the direction I want to go today?
Got it.
So rather than ripping cards until my hands bleed and coming back in 2 weeks and hoping I can do it again, what if I just rip 1 or 2 decks and stop before I ever even get tired, and just do that consistently and allow the consistency over time to take what was once the comfort zone and expand it to the point that it engulfs the old limit without ever having to go near the limit.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's definitely a much smarter approach.
It is.
That reminds. So to me, that sounds. I'm sure you're familiar with greasing the groove. Is that?
Oh sure.
Is that similar concept?
Absolutely.
Or, okay.
Absolutely. That was going back to the RKC and Pavel and my involvement with all of that. I was so enamored of that particular organization at the time that I just kept showing up, and they started giving me responsibilities. And I, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, I was one of their master instructors and taught at the certifications.
Right. Yeah, I saw you were the master instructor with Strong First.
Yeah. So Pavel, in those early books in the RKC era of things, talked about treating training as a practice and greasing the groove to get that neurological strength. And a couple things happened there. One, nervous system output for strength will increase strength without necessarily making you bigger.
Right.
Which for a lot of people is desirable. Some people want to be strong but not big.
Yeah.
And the market that he was going for with that idea was weight class athletes and people who have tactical jobs like law enforcement and
like military
and stuff.
Yeah.
Because if you're a military guy who needs to be hard to be seen, walking around at 240,
it's gonna be tough.
It's gonna, it's much better to be 5'9" and 160 pounds. You can blend in anywhere, that kind of thing, right?
Still be fast and agile and strong.
And strong,
all those things.
So introducing the idea of training as a practice, and that was sort of the greasing the groove kind of thing. The other thing that happens with that is, especially if your practice is of a higher intensity, and what I mean by intensity is the actual scientific definition, percentage of a 1 rep max, not or percentage of a given thing, right? So if it's
not like a perceived intensity.
Yeah, not like how hard you're trying,
right?
But like what the actual math says. So if you can lift 100 pounds 1 time but not 2, and you do all your practice with 70 pounds, you're operating at 70% intensity.
Right.
Is the simplest way to do that. And that can be distance, that can be number of reps, but that's just kind of the quick definition of that. So I started training at a lower intensity, not to failure, with more frequency.
Yeah.
And in addition to the neurological efficiency of practice like that, because I was a musician, I played the guitar, I understood how to practice.
Yeah.
I was a martial artist. I understood what practice meant. It didn't mean go until you're exhausted. It meant stop before you get tired.
Right.
Because if you practice sloppy, you just get more efficient at being sloppy.
100%, yeah.
And so applying that to physical training made a lot of sense. And as I was learning more about the old-time lifters like Arthur Saxon, Sig Klein, Eugen Sandow, Hermann Gerner, guys who lived in the late 1800s, early 1900s, who were doing these phenomenal feats of strength, and studying how they actually trained, and talking to Dennis and talking to Slim, and studying how people who were actually doing it, like being able to observe them in real time, how they actually did it, it was all the same thing. Very, very rarely would they redline it. And if you think about it from a standpoint of a performing strongman, your job is to do these feats of strength. So if you're a high intensity guy and you go in the gym and it's squat day or whatever, and you just completely obliterate yourself, and you need to lay around and drink protein shakes and eat steaks for 3 days to be able to comfortably get up and down from the toilet or walk a flight of steps,
right,
that works, and you can get big and strong that way. But if it was your job, and it's like, okay, I've got a show today, I've got a show the day after tomorrow, and I've got 2 shows the following day.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go in and in my own training attempt to push myself past the limit, because I've got to do it again tomorrow.
Right. That wouldn't be effective or,
No.
or efficient at all.
No, it's not effective or efficient at all. And if you're doing something like, I've done multiple shows in the same week. I did the county fair last year, and I did 6 shows in 3 days outdoors in the Tennessee heat in the summertime.
Man. Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't need to do anything else. I am good right now.
Yeah, that intensity or that humidity alone
Sure.
will take it out of you, man.
Sure. And so learning that strength is a practice and it's a skill that can be developed, along that very naturally progressed into, okay, if it's a practice, how can I make the practice easier? How can I find the parts that are challenging to me and figure out a way to make them easier? Because I believe, for me, the biggest compliment you could pay me as a strength performer is to come up to me and after I do something and say, man, you made that look easy.
Yeah, and you do.
Well, thank you.
I mean, you're speaking and you're bending things while you're speaking.
Well, and that's part of the training too. Is I have to be able to talk to a group of people the same way I'm talking to you right now, with a heart rate at 155 beats a minute, and act like nothing's going on.
Right.
Because just because I'm making the feats as easy as possible doesn't mean they're easy.
Absolutely.
So if I'm up there bending a particularly gnarly piece of steel, my physiology is the same as anybody else's. My heart rate's going to spike, and everything that goes along with,
Yeah.
doing a hard effort for 20 or 30 seconds or even longer if it's a more involved feat. Then I have to immediately act like nothing happened.
Right, and go right back to speaking.
Go right back to speaking. And so actually part of my personal practice is doing stuff to get my heart rate up and then rehearsing my speech with my heart rate high.
Yeah, that's a good move.
And because the idea being that if I can at say a heart rate of 155 or 160, which theoretically should almost kill a man my age because I'm turning 50 this year, so my heart's younger than the rest of me, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
I should be able to, if I can talk as calmly as I'm talking now with my heart rate at 150 or 160, then I can do that for an extended period of time. Keep my heart rate there and talk and practice speaking and doing feats with an accelerated heart rate that way. Then when it's actually showtime, and I know that the feats that I'm doing in a show are probably not quite as difficult as what I'm doing in my training.
Yeah.
But they're still difficult enough that the average person isn't going to be able to do them.
Right.
Then I'm able to concentrate on delivering my message. I'm able to concentrate on how I look while I'm doing the feats. I'm able to concentrate on the reaction of any specific audience member, because I can cue in on somebody and I might make slight alterations in what I'm doing based on someone's reaction to try to relate to everybody a little bit more. Because when you're looking out at the crowd, some people are just sitting there staring at you like dead fish.
Yeah.
Some people really get into it, and like I'll do feats and I'll see them start to have these physical reactions. I'm going to cue off those people that are having those physical reactions, because if I'm getting them to react, then there's like a spillover into the rest of the audience.
Right. It's that energy, man.
Mm-hmm. And so being able to do that is very important for me as a professional, because I want to be able to deliver the maximum experience for the audience member.
Yeah.
And if I'm up there and I do something that's really difficult and I'm huffing and puffing, I'm like, guys, I got to sit down, drink some water, give me a couple of minutes, just talk amongst yourselves. You don't get invited back if you do that kind of stuff.
Right, yeah.
And more important than that, they don't get the message.
Right. Yeah, because, I mean, that's a part of the allure. That's a part of, like, your mythology, if you will. You know what I mean? Like, people see you, and they're like, yeah, you're an old-time strongman, but, I mean, you are superhuman now, right? You know what I mean? And I think it's funny because, like, as we're talking, like, you've mentioned how it's just simply, like, it's a practice, and it's a skill that you've developed slowly over time. But so many people are quick to say, like, oh, you're talented. You're born with that. You know what I mean? Like, they will just say you're superhuman. Like, I could never do that. And they'll discredit themselves.
Well, and the more they say that, the righter they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the mind leads the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. But, I mean, so you're essentially, you get used to training yourself, putting your, like, at a certain, you normalize a certain level of intensity, so that way when you perform, like you're at your best when you do that.
That's a really, really good description of it. Normalizing a certain level of intensity. I never thought of it in those terms before, but yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Nice. So what's you actually alluded to earlier? You said your training's changed a whole lot these days compared to. So what's training look like for you now?
A year and a half ago, prior to that, since 2008, 9, somewhere around in there, I had owned a gym. I had been in the gym business. I was teaching and training clients. And so I would go to the gym, and in between classes or individual sessions with people, I would have all this time. And I could just literally spend 2 or 3 hours a day leisurely working on things if I wanted to. Or not leisurely working on them, you know. Then last July, it's been a little bit over a year now, I decided to get out of the gym business. My wife was pregnant. Our son was due in October. And I wanted to move my income generating stuff away from anywhere else except my home as much as I possibly could. And I still travel and do shows. I was in Utah last week. I'm going to Europe next week.
Right.
But I don't have to get up and be somewhere at 8 o'clock and then don't get home until 5 in the evening and spend 30 minutes with my son before he goes to bed, that kind of stuff. So my wife and I, she's a photographer. We both are at home with him all the time. We don't have to put him in daycare or anything like that. And those are decisions that we made because that's how we wanted our life to be.
Yeah.
So I got out of the gym business a little over a year ago, and then he was born, and anyone who has children knows that he's my first and almost certainly going to be my only child. There's this radical shift in how you perceive time.
Yes.
Because there's this devotion that has to happen to take care of the child. And when they're really young, they're on their own schedule.
Oh, yeah.
And sleep is a precious thing, and time is a precious thing. And so I wound up not training very much, just like the absolute bare minimum of practice that I could do to keep my feats sharp.
Okay.
So that when it came time to go do a show, I wouldn't get up there and be like, I'm going to not rip this deck of cards in half kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, so essentially doing like skill work just to maintain.
Yeah, skill work just to keep the skill where it needed to be.
Right.
And then realized that I was putting on some pounds, and I was kind of achy when I was moving around because I wasn't moving around, kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay, how can I use this minimalist approach to start getting back into a condition that I want to be in? Because I took several months off to just be home and do that. And I'm like, okay, February rolled around. He was born in October, and first big show I've got, I'm getting on a plane and going to Europe. So it was from I'm home all the time to now I'm in Europe, jet lagged.
Yeah, shock to the system.
Yeah, shock to the system. So I actually had to prepare physically to be able to endure that kind of thing. And so I set up an experimental program that actually turned into a product.
Okay.
I'm like, what's the minimum that I can get away? I didn't want to do a kettlebell thing because when I've done so much of that when I started up, I'm like, I'm going to do this kettlebell thing, and I know it works because I've done it before, and I'm going to do this. And I'm like, nah, again? I'm going to do that again? No. Yeah. And I knew based on that emotional response that I was having that I wasn't going to stick to it.
Yeah, it didn't excite you.
It didn't resonate with me, right?
Yeah.
So what can I do? So I started blocking out time and using density training, which is an amount of work done in a given period of time. We were talking about intensity earlier.
Yeah.
The other two variables are volume, which is how much work you're doing, and then density is how much work are you doing in a given period of time. So if we have a 15-minute block and you do 50 reps of a particular exercise today, and then next week you do 55 reps of the same exercise in the same period of time, you've had an increase in that density.
Okay.
And likewise, if it took you 15 minutes to get 50 today, and next week you get 50 in 13 and a half minutes, there's also a compression of density there. It's the amount of work done in a given period of time.
Okay.
And I decided I'm just going to do this with a single dumbbell and see what I can do for that conditioning aspect, because I was also still practicing all the feats that I do, and there's a certain amount of time that's dedicated to that, just as if you were a musician.
Yeah, it's just daily practice.
Yeah, and like if you're a concert pianist or that kind of thing, and you miss a few days of practice, no one in the audience might know that you're off your game just a little bit, but you'll know while you're playing it. And it's the difference between, God, I hope I get through this, and I'm really delivering something here.
Right.
You know? And I don't ever want to be in the dear God, I hope I get through this category when I'm in front of a group of people.
Yeah.
Because that's not fair to them.
Right.
That's my professional standard. So I started doing this conditioning work with this single dumbbell, and it worked phenomenally. And I'm like, you know what? I should just kind of codify this into a thing and generalize it to make it instead of a thing that I'm doing for me, make it a one size fits most people, because there is no one size fits all.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But I structured it in such a way that it can be modified to fit just about anybody. And if you go to theonedumbbellchallenge.com, I'm giving away a cheat sheet on mistakes that you're probably making in your training, because I've made them with myself and with clients. And then that'll also take you to a page where you can purchase the program itself.
Okay.
And so that was a thing that I went through for several months there, and got my conditioning back in place. Currently, my training, what it looks like, is mostly feats practice, and I've got a couple of things that are brewing in the back of my mind that I want to do on or around my birthday, because it's 50th birthday.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And I had my 30th class reunion a couple of years ago, and from then until now, a couple of those guys, one just last weekend, have passed away at age 49, 50, somewhere around in there, and I'm like, there's a lot of
perspective.
Yeah, there's a lot of people think 50's old, and I used to be one of them when I was like 22, but now I'm like, that's in 3 months, so
It's not old.
50's not old, no. And so I'm like, how can 50-year-old me top 40-year-old me?
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, get better as you're aging.
Yeah, and so it requires intelligent planning. It requires thoughtful imagination.
Yeah.
And because without that clear picture in my mind, I'm not going to get there, because I don't know where there is.
Right. Are you doing any sort of like mobility work?
Sure.
Okay, because I've found that's so huge, and like the more I study it, I'm coming across more and more people to where like they'll say, man, and for myself, I've even experienced this, where like you kind of take a step back from like the classical, like I don't know, maybe barbell method or something, and you focus on like a lot of like mobility, because mobility done correctly, like it is strength in your end ranges. So I mean, when done correctly, like you can get a lot of gains and not really lose any strength, if not gain some in a fuller capacity and range of motion.
Sure.
So is that a part of your protocol now?
Definitely.
Or yeah?
Definitely. So a few years ago, I went through the instructor training for a system called Original Strength.
Okay.
Which was founded by Tim Anderson, and there's a lot of it's modeled off infant development physically. So it's lay on the back and breathe is where you start, and then you start moving the head and moving the limbs around, and eventually you're rolling and then crawling.
Yeah, it's like these natural human movements.
And so the really cool thing is I'm getting to watch my son teach that stuff to me again.
That's cool.
One more time. So I'll
You're learning firsthand from the best.
Pretty much daily, I get on the floor and we do whatever he's doing, you know.
Nice.
Like when he was learning how to roll over and sit up, I was right there with him. He's learning how to crawl. I'm on the floor rocking and crawling with him.
Oh,
you know?
nice. Yeah, and biologically, I bet you're way younger than 50, right? I mean, I've learned, so there's a difference between our chronological age and our biological age, right? Have you ever got your biological age tested? I bet you're younger.
I haven't, but I would love to.
Yeah, me too. I want to do that too, because I'm sure you're younger than 50 biologically.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff and feats practice and a little bit of conditioning work, because now it's at the point where the conditioning is pretty much where I need it to be.
Yeah.
And so I just do enough to keep that where it is.
Yeah.
And feat practice, because I'm constantly looking for ways to either do more difficult feats and make them look easy, or take feats that I'm already doing and make them look so casual that no one knows. I want people to come away from a show going, I wonder how strong he really is.
Yeah, because man, see, that's such a powerful, like ambition. I mean, you're like, I want to be the absolute best, and I want people to understand. Like, you want them to, how do I want to say this? Like, you just want them to be just amazed and bewildered by what you just did and how easy you made it look. Like, that's next level stuff.
Well, and if you think about, say people in the Cirque du Soleil, right?
Yeah.
I saw a Cirque du Soleil show when I was in Vegas about 10 years ago. It was a Chris Angel Cirque du Soleil thing, and these acrobats were doing these things, and they're in these costumes, and I'm looking at their faces as they're doing these things, and they're smiling, and they have these relaxed kind of passive looks on their faces while they're doing, you know, one-arm handstands and one-arm pull-ups, or lifting a grown man overhead and doing this very graceful, delicate move, supporting another person overhead kind of stuff. And I'm like, they're making it look so easy.
Yeah.
That's what's up. Because here's the thing about making something look easy, even if it's not. If something's really hard, it's nearly impossible to make it look easy. If something is easy, I can make it look as hard as I want to as part of the impact of the drama of a show.
Yeah.
So I can take a very easy feat and make it look difficult. I can't take a difficult feat and make it look easy as easily.
Yeah, right. It takes a lot more work to do that, for
So
sure.
so going back to the idea of, if I make everything as easy as possible, even the impossible stuff becomes easy.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And that's how I want it to be. And I realize that bleeds over into every aspect of life. Because if we wake up and we're, you know, bitching about how we don't have any money, or about how just complaining or criticizing about anything, then we're setting ourselves into that vibration to spot more of that around us and to draw more of that to us.
Yeah.
And if we're thinking life's hard, the struggle is real, and all of this other stuff, where we commiserate on stuff. Yeah, I know what you mean, man. That sucks. My life sucks too because of this thing,
Yeah.
And then you just wind up in this downward spiral. I'm far more interested in an upward spiral.
Yes.
Like, what awesome thing is going to happen today?
Yes.
Or even if something that doesn't appear to be necessarily awesome or positive, there's something in it, some good that can be mined from it.
Yeah, and negativity, man, it'll try to create like a group atmosphere, man. Like,
Absolutely.
If somebody's feeling down, they'll say something to you. You gotta get away from me with that, man. I had somebody DM me just the other day I don't know if they're just trying to make themselves feel better or what, but there was some negative stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I can't deal with that, man. Like, we gotta be positive.
There's a quote I ran across not too long ago from was it Emmett Fox? I can't remember. I think it was Emmett Fox, and it hit me so hard. It said, criticism is silent no, let me start over. Criticism is indirect self-boasting.
Oh.
So if I'm sitting here and I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, yeah, this guy, he blah, 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 he doesn't this, or he can't that, what I'm actually doing is attempting to elevate myself above you.
Yes, feeding that ego.
I'm trying to feed my ego to feel better about something that I feel lacking about, by criticizing you, which makes about as much sense if I don't like my car, if I think it's a junky old beat up car, and you're driving a nice car. If I come and smash your windshield and cut your tires, my car doesn't look any better. It's no better than it was.
Right.
Now yours is just messed up.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the difference between like what I call like a scarcity mindset and a growth mindset.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
People feel like you having something is taken away from them.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
It's not pie.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not pie. It's like air, right? If I take a huge, huge breath, does that mean that you're going to miss a breath?
No.
No.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, man.
And it's like it says in the Upanishads, from abundance he took abundance, and still abundance remained.
100%. Yeah, man. That's really the difference between. From my experience, there's not a successful person out there who lives in that scarcity mindset.
Even if they appear to be successful, if they have like a lot of money or a lot of whatever, if they're in a scarcity mindset, they can't be successful.
Right.
Because they're not happy, really.
They're not. You know, they maybe solve like one piece of the puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like those people aren't really happy.
Nope.
And it takes more than just money to be successful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely.
So with your training, are you doing anything for like recovery, like ice baths or cryo or massage or?
A few years ago, I had the wonderful opportunity to go and spend a week in the mountains with Wim Hof.
Yeah, I heard about that. Please tell me.
Well, I had an ice bath this morning.
Okay.
So I do usually daily breathing exercises along with the mobility work that I'm doing. And for a while, it was daily ice baths. I've kind of gotten away from that. And the reason is it's very difficult to get a good ice bath going in Tennessee in summer.
Yeah.
I have a big 23 cubic foot freezer that I bought on Craigslist.
Yes.
That is outside. It's full of water, and it's all rusty and nasty looking, and I spray painted redneck cryo chamber on it because I think that's funny.
I love it.
It's full of water and it runs on a timer.
Okay.
And that water stays, right now it's staying at around 40 degrees.
Okay.
In the wintertime, when the outside is colder, it'll freeze solid.
Yeah.
So I have to change the timer back to about 2 hours a day instead of 19 or 20 hours a day. But I just unplug that and get in it and sit for however long I want to, as part of the Wim Hof method training, which, if you ever get a chance to talk to him, he's an amazing guy.
Man, he's on the list. He's actually doing something, I think, in California.
In October,
in
yeah.
October. I really
Yeah.
want to try to make that. He was in San Francisco last November, and I actually happened to be there. And I wish I would have, like, planned better, because I would have 100%. I didn't know he was going to be there whenever I was going to be there.
I feel very fortunate that I got connected with his whole tribe when I did, which was about, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago.
And before he blew up.
Before it started blowing up, before he was on Joe Rogan, before he got in contact with Tony Robbins,
Right.
and all that stuff. So the instructor training group that I was with, there were about 30 of us in a cabin in Colorado with Wim doing the thing there, you know. And it was the first workshop I went to. There were maybe 50 people there with him, and it was a 2-day workshop. And now this thing that's coming up in California, I was looking at it, I think they're in a place that seats like 2,000 people.
Yeah, they're gigantic.
Yeah,
now.
so being able to walk up to him, shake his hand, and talk to him for a few minutes is going to be a very rare commodity that I had the luxury of being able to do.
Yeah, now didn't you carry him up a mountain?
I did not carry him up a mountain. We went up a mountain, and I took a photo of me holding him.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't carry him up the mountain.
That's how those stories of legends are born, dude.
Yeah. But once we were up there, and it was in Colorado, and it was the week before the 2016 elections, because I was there on election night.
Okay.
And I remember being surprised when I woke up saying, "Really? Trump won?" I never saw that coming, but that's a story for another time. Strange times, yeah. But we had gone up the mountain the day before, and it was probably between 30 and 35 degrees, and I had on a pair of boots, these boots that I'm wearing actually, and a kilt and some shorts under it, and a backpack.
That's it.
And we went up there, and once I got up there, I twisted up a horseshoe.
Oh, nice.
And left it on the mountain.
That's a perfect way to cap off the whole experience.
Well, my original plan was to blow up a hot water bottle when I got up there, and then we got up there, I'm like, I don't know that I can do this up here, so I'm just going to let that one go.
Yeah. Was it a 14er that you like 14,000 feet, or how high did you guys?
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was up there though.
Yeah.
It took probably an hour and a half to hike the trail to get up there. And there was snow on the ground.
Okay. Yeah.
It wasn't like in a blizzard condition, but there was still snow on the ground.
Right.
It was a sunny day though, so it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I love Colorado. I love the mountains.
And then once we got up there, we found a stream, and we went and did some exercises, putting our hands and feet and face in the water and making a distinction between fear, pain, and cold, because those are 3 completely different things that you'll experience all at the same time.
Oh.
And it all feels like the same thing. So, okay, are you afraid? That's fine. Are you in any danger? No, because there's people around me, and I'll be safe. So you can kind of set the fear aside.
Yeah.
Then when you get in the cold, like it's already cold outside, and you put your hand in moving water.
Yeah.
You have to break the ice off the top of it to get in the moving water.
Yeah.
There's pain involved with that.
Oh, yeah.
But is it dangerous? No, because I can get out anytime I want to.
Right.
So now all we're left with is the fear.
Yeah.
And fear's the mind killer, right?
Yeah, it really is, man.
And I believe that it ultimately comes down, to get esoteric again, it comes down to there's really only 2 basic emotions, and really they're just opposite sides of the same coin. You're either in fear or you're in love. You're operating from one of those 2 places. And pretty much any emotional response that we can have can be traced back to one of those 2 root places.
Right.
And any emotional response that we have can actually be traced back, or any situation that we have and our reaction to it can be traced back to either of those. And it's a conscious decision. Do I want to operate from fear, or do I want to operate from love?
Yeah, so many people operate from fear.
Well, we're taught to do that.
Yeah.
It's scarcity mindset, right?
It really is. It really is. But when you can switch over and come from that place of love, like that's a powerful thing. And even that word, because words are so powerful, some people are afraid of that word. Like it just becomes
afraid of love. Yeah.
Yeah, they really are. Like they put I don't know, these weird ideals on it or something. But like, I mean, I don't know, man. Love is this very powerful concept. Yeah, it's all encompassing.
And I think it really comes down to, am I strong enough to be vulnerable?
Yes.
Because if I'm not strong enough to be vulnerable, or if I don't feel willing to be vulnerable, now I'm afraid.
That's so true.
And if I can be vulnerable, I open myself up for the love. And it can be literally an identical situation.
Yeah.
Literally the same, the one thing's happening, and it's a choice of how do I want to respond to this.
100%. And that takes strength, right?
It takes strength and it takes practice.
Yeah, which begs the question, what is strength? Let me ask you that. What is strength to you? I mean, it can mean so many things.
It can mean so many things. I'm glad you did that, because I'm a strong proponent of getting very clear definitions of things that are important to me.
Yes.
Like success. What is success?
What is that? Let's talk about both of those.
Well, we'll do success first, because I've got a canned response for that. I've got a quote from a guy named Earl Nightingale that sums it up for me, and I reserve the right to change my definition of it if I find something that works better, but I haven't found it yet. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Okay. So if I know where I'm going, and I'm taking steps towards that, and the place that I'm going is going to allow me to fully be me and be happy and make the world a better place, that is success.
100%.
I can be sitting here with no idea where any of it's going to come from, and as long as I know that I have something that I can do that'll move me in that direction, even if it's just imagining what it feels like, I'm already successful.
Yeah, living with a purpose.
Yeah.
100%.
Living with a purpose and identifying with that purpose to the point that I know that I'm taking steps towards it, right?
Yes.
As far as what is strength, that took a little while for me, because I like to get definitions that are non-situational specific, right? Mm-hmm. Because if, like with success, we say, okay, what is financial success? You can rate that in numbers. What is relationship success? You can describe that in behaviors, right? Yes. But with strength, okay, there's the show that's on now. Did we talk about this already, or was it before we started?
It might have been before we started. We're talking about on History Channel.
Talking about on History Channel, the strongest men in history, or whatever the name of the show is. I haven't actually watched a full episode, but I had a clip pop up on YouTube the other day. These 4 guys, one guy whose name I can't remember, but he's a strong guy. I haven't seen him compete. The other 3 guys, Brian Shaw, Eddie Hall, and Nick Best.
Oh, the other guy's Robert. Yeah, he was on something. He was on Joe Rogan the other day. And
Orville, or
maybe.
I feel bad for not. I'm gonna have to go and.
We know it's Robert though.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go and learn his name. He was on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he's from Texas.
Yeah, he's got this huge beard, and he's like
big strong guy.
Yeah, he looks like a guy I'd like to hang out with. Yeah. Awesome guy. But the clip from. It was literally just in the past week. They were at Nick Best's house, and Nick lives in Las Vegas. And the premise of the show is they're going around doing all these different things. They went to Paul Anderson's house, and if you don't know who Paul Anderson is, he's like one of the strongest men in recorded history. He would casually squat 800 or 900 pounds in dress shoes as part of his talk as ministering to youth.
Oh my gosh.
Handstand push-ups at a body weight of like 350 pounds.
It's amazing.
There's a clip of him doing a one-arm press with 300 pounds for 2 reps on YouTube. It's stunning how strong he is. And it's effortless looking, too. So anyway, they're at Nick's house, and Nick brings up that this classic feat of strength is ripping decks of cards in half. And there was a guy back in the old days, I don't remember who they said it was, that could stack 3 decks together and rip all of them at the same time. And then these guys start attempting to do this feat, and Brian Shaw,
4-time world's strongest man, I do believe.
And I met him at the Arnold Classic a few years ago. He wouldn't remember me because he's like, hey, Brian, how's it going? His wife is like 5'2" and 100 pounds, too. I'm just a tiny little woman. So it was weird to see them together.
I bet. He's gigantic.
He's huge. He attempted it and started, like, ripping the skin open on his hand. And he's like, I'm not going to do this because I don't want to mess my hands up. Which is fine, I totally respect that. And the other 3 guys did it, and Eddie Hall and Robert, whose name we don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to look it
need
up.
to look that one up.
I'll do it real
go ahead and look that up.
I'll do that real fast so we're not slacking.
So that when I do meet him eventually, that I'll, not be that guy. They did it, and it took like 2 or 3 minutes or more for them to do it. And then Nick actually knew what the technique was. Same technique that I use that I learned from Dennis Rogers. And he says, you hold it like this, and then you squeeze and you twist. It took him about 1.5 minutes. Well, I've seen the cards and handled enough varying decks of cards. Mm-hmm. They're not all the same. Some are very difficult. Some are incredibly easy. But the deck of cards that he ripped, I have torn into eighths. So you tear it in half, then you take that, and you tear that in half, and then you take that, and you tear it in half in less than a minute.
Robert Oberst.
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 Yes.
Okay, we're there.
Robert Oberst. I will never forget that again. My apologies to Robert Oberst. I have nothing but respect for you. It's just that until this show came out, I had never seen.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's new to the scene anyway.
He's new to the scene, yeah. And, of course, I've watched the documentary about Eddie Hall and the other two guys I met at Arnold a few years ago, or was around them anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, Nick rips his deck of cards, and he did really well. You know, for it to be his first attempt to get all the way through a full deck in a minute and a half or a minute, 15 seconds, whatever it was really, really good. But I'm watching them, and I'm like, these guys can deadlift. If you put 800 pounds on a bar and said go deadlift that, every one of them could get up and say, here, hold my coffee, I'm going to go pick this up and set it back down. Same as you or me picking up a suitcase.
100%. Yeah.
100%, yeah. And so I'm like, the specificity of that kind of strength really, really was explicitly illustrated in that, because these guys are literally the strongest men in the world. And I'm able to do a feat that, with very little effort, that the best of them, it took a minute and a half or a minute, 15 seconds, whatever it was, to do. And I'm like, so it depended on how you want to look at strength. For what I do, I'm stronger than them at that particular feat.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to lifting stones or whatever their events are, I'm not even going to attempt to do the stuff that they're doing, because they're amazing. So all that to say, what is an overarching definition of strength regardless of the subject matter? Because if we're looking at it from a lifting or bending or whatever standpoint like that, or even a running.
Yeah, well, I always think of like gymnasts.
Sure.
You know, on the rings and they'll hold those poses. Like, that's crazy strength.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So the definition that I use is strength is the ability to produce or withstand force.
That's simple and direct.
Yeah, and it's very obvious in terms of physical stuff. Like if we take.
Yeah.
Let's do something here. If
we
take,
this is perfect timing for this.
Yeah, I have no idea how much force it takes to do what I'm about to do. Actually, let me do this one, because I know this one. This is a 60 penny nail. Classic feat of strength for old-time strongmen. And it takes about 250 to 300 pounds of force to bend one of these.
Okay.
And I've got these leather wraps that I put on them because I don't want this to happen to my palm.
Right, you want to protect your hand.
I want to protect my hand. So I'm going to wrap it up, and I can produce a lot of force, so I'm strong. This can withstand a lot of force, so it also is strong.
Yes.
So what it comes down to is who's producing the most force.
Right.
Or is my ability to produce force greater than this nail's ability to withstand force?
Right.
So it comes down to very literally who is stronger, me or the nail. And physically, there's a lot of technique stuff that can be done. But going back to that idea, mentally, am I able to mentally put myself in a place that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to bend this?
Right.
And we hear the urban legend stories about the woman lifting the car off the kid, right?
Yeah.
I actually went through a period of time when I was obsessively looking for those kinds of things on the internet, and I found, let me go ahead and bend this and then we'll talk. So it takes about 250 to 300 pounds of force, which isn't that much force really. Like if it were a refrigerator, just about anybody you know can push it across the room, right?
Yeah.
So to move that much weight is not that difficult. If we put it on a barbell to pick it up off the floor and say a deadlift or squat it, it becomes increasingly more difficult. What makes this feat so difficult is that all of that force has to be translated through the hands and wrists.
Yes.
And so if you've ever done any kind of martial arts and found yourself in a wrist lock.
I have a sore wrist. I do jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
My wrist's sore today.
Sure. Well, you know that the wrist is a fairly delicate thing.
Yes.
And so we have to have a lot of wrist strength. We have to have a lot of tissue integrity in the tendons and the connective tissue and all that. And also we have to be able to exert enough force through that to be able, and in such a way that all of the force goes into the weakest point. So I love it when I talk, especially with jiu-jitsu guys, about feats of strength, because they get it.
Yeah.
What I'm doing is maximizing my leverage in such a way that I can exert the maximal amount of force into the weakest single point of whatever I'm using.
Yeah. And that's like a feel thing, right? You feel where the weakest point is. And that's
and it can vary.
Yeah.
So I wrap it up like this. I'm going to do this in what's called an overhand style.
Okay.
I'm just going to, you want to try it? Try it real quick before I do it.
Oh, God. was gonna embarrass myself. I just that's so hard.
And so I'm just going to bring it in, and you'll see there's a
And that was already a little bit bent when you handed it to
there's a minimal amount of difference between the way I'm holding it and the way you held it. You were kind of down here. I'm going to come way up here. So I'm going to maximize my leverage this way.
Okay.
And I just exert that force, and it starts to bend,
Yeah.
right? And this is what I'm talking about. I don't want you to know if this is hard or easy. I want to make it look easy regardless.
Yeah.
And truthfully, this is a fairly easy piece for me to bend.
For you, yeah.
Because I'm sitting down. That's another thing, right?
Does that help?
It does help. I mean, if you really want to exert a lot of force, you stand up and you get your entire body into it, right?
Yeah.
So this makes it even more difficult sitting down.
No, it does,
Because-
because you're eliminating this whole
You can't.
strength and power structure. Yeah.
So then we get it bent down like this. And yeah, so it takes about 250 to 300 pounds of force to bend one of those.
That's amazing. That is cool stuff, dude. Oh, wow. Yeah.
It's fun stuff.
Yeah, man. The wrists are weak. It doesn't take very much pressure to break a wrist.
No,
No, not at all.
no, it does. But again, it has to do with alignment, right? So if I have a neutral wrist and I'm punching, I can exert a lot of force into that wrist.
Right.
If I get off that way and do the same force, then instead of the force traveling up the arm, it goes through the wrist that way, and
Yeah, and something has to give.
then bad things happen, right?
Yeah.
So what was I going to talk about before I was going to bend this wrench? I said we'd come back to it, and I lost it.
Well, you said that you knew exactly how much this required.
Right,
other
and I
than
don't
that.
know how much this one takes, but
Yeah.
it's more than that. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to wrap it up and do it as well.
Okay.
This was the feat that made me decide I wanted to be an old-time strongman, seeing Dennis Rogers bend a wrench like this.
Specifically a wrench.
Specifically a wrench, yeah.
Yeah, because you do several different feats, right? Or do you have kind of like a handful that are kind of like your go-tos now after trying the different various ones?
Sure. There are classic feats that everyone does,
Yeah.
like the 60 penny nail. That goes all the way back to vaudeville. If you couldn't bend a 60 penny nail as a strongman back then, you weren't really taken
You're not a
seriously.
strongman.
Yeah, you weren't really a strongman.
Yeah.
Bending wrenches is a much more modern thing.
Okay.
As far as I know, Dennis was the first one to do that, and there are lots of guys that bend wrenches now. I'm going to see what I can do with this one.
Okay.
Seated right here.
Yeah. Oh
See,
my goodness.
That's obviously a little more difficult than the nail was.
Yeah, man, and you're doing it seated, like you said. I mean, that's gigantic, man.
I'm going to have to stand up to finish it.
Yeah, do what you gotta do.
Just go right here. And
Use the force of your thighs to help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I've been watching you on Instagram for a while, bending stuff, and doing like the bent press with the kettlebell, and you're doing the leverage with like
Yeah.
the sledgehammer, and dude, just
you
so
got a
much
pen
strength.
holder for your desk now.
Oh, this is perfect.
That's cool.
Oh, this is great.
Yeah, so there's classic feats like the nail.
Yeah.
This is a very similar feat, but it's more modern because we're using a more modern implement, right?
Oh, I love this.
So there's a few classic feats that I do. Bending a nail, bending longer piece of steel, twisting open horseshoes.
Yeah.
Those are all classic feats. Ripping decks of cards, which we'll talk about here in a minute. And then other more modern feats that I'll do, blowing up a hot water bottle, that's a classic one too. I don't do that very often, mostly because it takes a few minutes to recover the breath from it.
Yeah.
But if I'm doing a show where it's just feats and I'm not really having to talk a whole lot, I'll include that one very often. Driving a nail through a board with my hand.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, so those are classic feats that lots and lots of guys do, ladies too, lots and lots of people do them. And it's very, very cool. Having been a musician, I think of those feats as like classic cover songs.
Okay.
What can I do and take this and make it more uniquely mine, but you still recognize it that it's a Muddy Waters blues song, right?
Yeah.
So that's the classic feats. And then there are what I would consider signature feats. Like you were talking earlier about pressing weight with one hand and leverage lifting the sledgehammer with the other hand. That, as far as I know, is a feat that I'm the first person to do, which really isn't that unique a thing. I just took two things that I was already doing and put them together.
Yeah, but that's creativity, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so it's how can I express my personality through feats of strength. Well, I love leverage lifting, sledgehammer stuff. I love pressing weight overhead.
Yeah.
So let's put those two things together. And the cool thing that I figured out is that there are lots of guys who can press more than me. There are several guys who can leverage more than me. There are very few people who can put both of them together with the same weights that I'm using.
Yeah.
Because there's that specificity of practice.
Yeah. I mean, that takes, you're using both sides of the body, both sides of the brain.
Doing two unrelated things.
Two unrelated things, yeah. And, like, just the control over the body.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, the thought that keeps coming back to mind as we're speaking, like, you have to really have a lot of, like, self-awareness and be able to, like, check in with your body
Mm-hmm.
and, like, listen to your body. That's one of the things that like one of the greatest, maybe I guess, skills that I've gained just through like martial arts and like athletics and different
Mm-hmm.
things. Like, you really learn to become in tune with your body and listen to it,
Mm-hmm.
and just the different cues and signals it gives you. But to do something like that, you really have to be tuned in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. And being in tune and listening to the body and actually having a conversation with it rather than an argument.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me. The mind controls the body. The initial thought on that is the body must do whatever the mind tells it to. Well, the body may put up a fight.
Yeah.
Or the body may be like, okay, I'll do this, but I'm going to break while I'm doing it. And I don't want to be that guy. So by learning how to have a conversation with the body, what's happened in my own experience and with people that I've worked with on this too is now I can listen to my body's whispers rather than waiting for it to scream.
Yes. Yes.
Because if it's whispering, hey, this is a bad idea, or hey, you can do a little more.
Yeah.
That's a much better place to be in than it's screaming, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, man, listen to your first mind. Like, your body knows.
Trust your intuition. Don't overthink stuff. And then the other feat we were talking about, ripping a deck of cards in half. This is unopened, and I'm actually hopefully going to, in the next few days, be done with a project. I bought the domain, but there's nothing there. When's the show going to air?
This actually might end up airing probably on Thursday, so like next couple days.
Okay, well, light a fire into me. So if you're listening to this and it's new and the site isn't up and running yet, then it will be shortly.
Give us a couple weeks, but we can still plug it for the people down the road.
Yeah, howtoripadadeckofcards.com is what the site's going to be. So I'm going to take this deck out. And as a jiu-jitsu guy, you'll really, really appreciate this. I've got the deck of cards, and you can see it's untampered.
Yeah, brand new.
I pulled the plastic off and opened it up. I hold them like this. And we talked earlier, before we started recording, about how, like, just feel the edge of that.
That's sharp, man.
That
can cut right into you.
Yeah, and that's actually what stopped Brian Shaw. He was doing it, and he was talking about, I'm about to rip my hand open with this thing. So that makes me feel good that I'm able to do one thing strength related that Brian Shaw didn't want to do.
But
yeah. So I hold it this way. And I come in with this hand.
Yeah, three fingers on that grip.
Yeah, 3 fingers on that. And I'm going to talk about this in the instructional bit on the new product. But I'm holding it here, right?
Yeah.
And when I grip, I don't do this. I do this.
Oh.
So this hand actually functions like a vice.
Yes, much different because it puts the pressure differently.
Mm-hmm. Because if I crush grip it, then that's going to make the cards do this.
Yes.
And now it's very difficult to tear them at that.
Yeah, once they start to give
in that
like
position,
that.
once they go in that position, right?
Okay.
So I'm wanting to keep them as flat and as square as I can, and I come in with the other hand.
Yes.
And you see how it starts to form an S.
Yes.
Now you know from jiu-jitsu, if this part right here is your elbow,
yeah, it's gonna.
and I get you in that position, you'll tap.
Right.
Because if you don't, you'll snap, right?
Well, those are only two options.
Yep. With the elbow for sure. What is it? Tap, snap, or nap.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy, but I do love that. So I come in from there, and I just exert this force. And you can see it start to open up.
Oh, it just starts to give.
And there we go, just like that, right?
Boom.
And that's how you rip a deck of cards in half.
Like butter.
See if I can do this seated. See if I can quarter them seated.
Man, you're doing next level stuff right now seated.
Here's a cool pro tip. It's easier to rip it on the side where it's already been ripped than it is on the side where it was cut from the factory.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if I'm doing this in a training situation, If I want to make it a little easier for my training workout, I'll go this way.
Yes.
If it's really super easy and I want to make it just incrementally harder, like slapping 2.5s on the end of the bar,
Yeah.
I'll go to this side.
Yeah, just that change in, yeah.
So having said that, I'm going to go with the easy way.
That's fair.
And you see the position is almost identical, except I don't have as much
to grab onto.
As much room, so I'm down to one finger instead of the two there.
Yeah.
And so I'm coming in, if you watch right there, again, I squeeze, it makes that S shape.
Yep.
And then my index finger slides right past that knuckle.
Yeah, and there's
it's a shear. It functions like a pair of scissors.
Yeah. I mean, you have that pivot point, it's leverage. Yep.
Leverage, pivot point, opposing forces. It has no choice.
It's all science here.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So
wow,
that's
dude.
what we do with cards right there.
That is
and
amazing.
I'm going to, very, very soon, it'll be available at howtoripadackofcards.com. I'm going to have the basic mechanics of it and how to get started there with that. And then I'm also going to go into several of the more intermediate to advanced feats, like quartering, ripping into eighths.
Okay.
Ripping out a notch that's like the size of your thumb.
That's
tearing
cool.
the corner off.
So that's the place to go. So, so let's kind of. I want to be respectful of your time. So we're gonna wrap this up here shortly. But I want to go so we have howtoripadackofcards.com.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned another product earlier.
The one dumbbell challenge.com.
The1dumbbellchallenge.com.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also gifted us with this awesome book here, Superhuman You.
Mm-hmm.
Is this on your website?
It's on Amazon.
Amazon. Okay. And
Amazon and Lulu.com both have those.
Perfect. And then you also have your website, right? irontamer.com.
My main website is irontamer.com, and it's set up in such a way to promote me as a motivational keynote speaker.
Okay,
and performing strongman. So if you go there looking for products and stuff, you won't get it.
That's kind of the best place to kind of check out your story and maybe book you for speaking.
Yeah, if you're interested in booking me for any event that you have, go there, and there's a little field where you put your name in and check availability.
Yeah.
Also, social media, my Instagram and Twitter is @irontamer.
Yep.
My Facebook is irontamer Dave Whitley. And what else is? Oh, there's YouTube, which is, if you look Iron Tamer, you'll find me on there too.
Okay,
So,
okay, yeah. That's how I found, again, we already talked about it. I probably mentioned it earlier already. I think I did, but Instagram is how I found you. And it was just such a small world that we had some mutual acquaintances and friends. And I remember one clip, and it was with your son, where you did this huge ohm.
Yeah.
And like calmed him down. I'm like, that is so cool. Like,
Yeah,
you want to talk about vibrations.
Yeah, he was maybe 2 weeks old. And he was crying. He was,
Yeah.
I mean, and I didn't know what was going on with him, you know. And I realized before I had a kid, I thought that the parent's role was to get the baby to stop crying. And after I had him, I realized that my role is to understand why he's crying, because he's asking me for something.
Right, that's how he communicates.
That's how he communicates, and that's all he had at the time. I mean, he's 10 months old, and he's got 3 or 4 basic sign language moves that he does now.
Yeah.
You know, so we can communicate a little bit better. But yeah, back then he would start crying, and that means, okay, he needs something. I don't know what he needs. In that particular instant, when I happened to catch that on video, because I was doing that all the time back then, if he would get overstimulated, if he would get tired, any of that kind of stuff, and I wanted to help him with that, I could just put my mind in the place that I wanted to take him.
Yeah.
In a very calm, again, operating from a place of love. Because if he's crying and I'm like, oh my God, why are you crying? What can I do for you?
They feel that, man. When you get upset.
That we can trace that back to its root of fear.
Yes.
The fear there being, he needs something and I don't know what it is. Oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yes.
Right? Or we can trace that back to love of, he needs something, and if I can pay attention to him in the right way, he will tell me what it is he needs.
Yes.
And the only way for me to do it in the right way is for me to be calm and for me to be the environment that I want him to be in emotionally and energetically.
Right.
And so I just held him and let loose with about a 30-second long ohm, and he just calmed down and was staring.
Yeah, it was so powerful. I mean, you set him to the vibration that you're trying to get him to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You transferred that from you.
And ultimately what I did is I set the vibration that he wanted to be in.
Yes.
His crying was telling me that he wanted to be calm.
Yes.
And so I helped him get there.
Yeah, that was so cool, man. So people definitely need to like check you out like on the social. Yeah, so Dave Whitley, the Iron Tamer on Facebook, Iron Tamer on Twitter, Instagram.
Yeah.
Dude, thank you so much for taking this time.
Thanks for having me on.
Is there anything else that you wanted to plug, promo? Did we cover it all? The floor is yours, man.
We covered the stuff that's recently come out, the V1dumbbellchallenge.com. We talked about my social media, upcoming how to rip a deck of cards. That's actually going to be the first installment of a series of things with the classic feats of strength.
Okay.
Is where I'm headed with that.
Yeah,
and,
you can make that a whole series of just different.
Yeah, and it'll all tie back to Old Time Strongman University with Dennis.
Yes.
Because these are the same feats that we teach in the live workshops. If you're in Prague, I'm going to be at the European Summit, I think is what it's called. I'm not even sure what kind of summit it is. I want to say it's some kind of tech thing.
Okay.
I'll be there either 12th or 13th of September. And then I'm doing, I don't remember what the event is, but it's for a group of insurance professionals in San Diego in October. And those are the last two
speaking engagements for the year.
That aren't local school type things, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm easy to find. Social media, if you can't remember any of that stuff, irontamer@gmail.com.
irontamer@gmail.com. Right on. Hey, Dave, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, folks, until next time.